So, hundreds of newly unsealed court documents related to Jeffrey Epstein are now public, and wow, the contents are absolutely explosive. In this explainer, we're going to dig into these files to really understand what they reveal about the powerful people in Epstein's world and be very serious questions they're raising about the official investigation.
Okay, first things first, you have to get your head around the sheer scale of this. We are talking about millions of pages of documents being unsealed. This isn't just some document dump, it is an absolute avalanche of information. And as you're about to see, just getting your hands on it has been a huge challenge in itself.
You know, there's a line from the source documents that just captures the feeling of all of this perfectly. The stench of scandal. He just cannot escape it. These files are implicating a staggering network of politicians, royals, and business titans, pulling them right back into a controversy that just refuses to go away.
All right, Section 1, a flood of files. Now, this release was supposed to happen by law, but actually getting to the truth, well, that's been a monumental challenge for journalists and really for anyone trying to follow this. So what are sources saying? They're describing it as a total data maze. I mean, you've got individual data sets that are hundreds of gigabytes, even when they're compressed. Downloads just crater halfway through, files are corrupted, and the DOJ's own website has repeatedly broken under the sheer load. So yeah, the information might be public, but it is far from accessible.
Okay, on to Section 2, the high-profile connections. And this is where it gets really interesting. Because once you actually manage to get past all those technical problems, the files expose these stunning contradictions between what people have said in public and what their private messages show.
Take Howard Lutnick, for example. Publicly, he claimed he was so repulsed by Epstein in a single meeting that he swore he'd never speak to him again. But the files? They tell a completely different story. They show a 2015 email where Lutnick is inviting Epstein to a fundraiser, and they confirm he had lunch on Epstein's Island in 2012. That's years after Epstein was already a convicted sex offender.
And you see this exact same kind of pattern with Elon Musk. He publicly stated he rejected Epstein's invitations, even called him a creep, but then you find a 2012 email, also sent years after Epstein's conviction, that shows Musk asking about the wildest party on the island and saying that he and his wife at the time planned to be there.
The files also get into some really disturbing territory. They contain draft emails that Epstein wrote to himself, which look a lot like he was preparing blackmail material against Bill Gates. In these drafts, which are written from the point of view of Gates's science advisor, Epstein lays out these shocking claims that Gates contracted an STD from Russian girls and then desperately tried to get antibiotics to secretly give to his then-wife, Melinda. Now, Gates denies all of this, but the fact these drafts even exist is pretty shocking.
Let's move on to Section 3, global political fallout. Because you have to understand, the impact here goes way beyond the US. This is triggering political earthquakes all over the world.
Take the UK, for instance. The revelations there have been absolutely seismic. Emails suggest that the former business secretary, Peter Mandelson, passed sensitive government info to Epstein during the 2008 financial crisis. That sparked a police investigation and a major political crisis. Meanwhile, you got Norway's crown princess expressing deep regret over her friendship with Epstein. And Prince Andrew is facing immense new pressure.
And this quote, man, it just shows you how deep those royal connections really ran. This is from an email that Sarah Ferguson, the Duchess of York, sent to Epstein while he was in prison. This, along with other emails showing she took her daughters to meet him shortly after he got out, paints a really devastating picture of just how close they stayed.
All right, Section 4, and this is crucial. A flawed investigation? Because these files, they don't just point fingers at individuals. They raise some really profound questions about the integrity of the entire investigation itself.
Okay, let's look at one really specific, really important document, the 1996 FBI complaint from Maria Farmer. She was the very first person to ever report Epstein. The DOJ released multiple versions of this exact same file, and as you can see here, the first version is almost completely blacked out.
But then, in a second copy of the exact same file, look at this. Some of those black bars just vanish, and key details start to appear.
And then you get to a third version, and even more is revealed. This is just baffling, right? And this kind of inconsistency, it's all over the entire data dump.
So this just begs the question, why on earth would you redact the same file 3 different ways? The Transparency Act says you can only make redactions to protect a victim's privacy. So why are these names and details being hidden? And why so inconsistently? It really suggests that information is being blacked out for reasons that have nothing to do with protecting victims.
And it's not just anonymous tips we're seeing. The files also have reports from what the FBI calls a confidential human source, or CHS. And you need to know, this isn't just some random person calling in. A CHS is a formally vetted informant whose information is taken very, very seriously. And what this source is alleging, it's absolutely explosive. One CHS report claims that Epstein was running a state-sponsored extortion operation that was tied to Israeli intelligence, specifically Mossad. The alleged goal? To compromise U.S. elites to create leverage for a foreign power. Okay, just a warning before we go any further, the stuff in this next section is extremely disturbing. It really reflects the gravest and most horrific allegations that are detailed in these released files.
You know, throughout these files, you see this strange mix of coded language right alongside these really explicit messages. This one, sent to Ghislaine Maxwell, mentions a treasure hunt for girls on the island. It echoes these long-circulating, though unproven, rumors of something far darker than just parties, rumors of human hunting.
And then there's what might be the most chilling document of all. It's a coded scrapbook, and it seems to have been written by a victim. When you decipher it, it tells this horrifying story of forced pregnancies, with the author describing herself as an incubator for Epstein's obsession with creating what he called perfect offspring. It's just a deeply personal and harrowing account of complete dehumanization. So, in the middle of all this data, all the political drama, the conspiracy theories, it's so important to remember the human cost, to remember the survivors who are still out there fighting for justice. This quote, it's from a family member of a survivor who tragically did not live to see these files come out. And it just speaks volumes about the immense human toll here. For so many people, this isn't some final victory. It's a painful reminder of a decades-long fight for the truth, a fight that demands not just transparency, but real, actual accountability. And so that's where we're left. Even with millions of pages out in the open, we know there are millions more that are still sealed. Key information is still hidden behind those black bars. And so the central question remains. After all the crimes, the cover-ups, and the contradictions, will the public ever learn the full, unreducted truth of the Epstein network? It's a story that is far from over.